Sources confirmed to NBC News that President Biden has asked Democratic National Committee leaders to shake up the calendar to enhance the influence of non-white voters. In its current format, the Iowa caucuses kick things off, followed by contests in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. But the new proposal calls for South Carolina to start the process, followed by New Hampshire and Nevada on the same day, then Georgia, then Michigan. Iowa would see its caucuses replaced with a traditional primary.
I'm sure my sisters and brothers and family and friends in Iowa are not happy about this. I have been on that trail across the country, as has the mayor, several times, and they certainly prided themselves. And I'm talking about the Democratic Iowans here and not the apparatus of the Democratic Party. So I'm sure that they are not happy. And the Iowa caucuses were a scene of chaos. We remember this, Mayor, and I'm sure the people watching us remember this too. In the 2020 primaries, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. I want you to come with me. You ain't got to pack any bags. Let's just go. When results were released in batches in coming days, they were tainted by mistakes that require corrections and apparent math errors that may never be fixed. Sorting through the wreckage isn't just a humiliating experience for the state's Democrats, it's also a cautionary tale. And that reporting was coming from the Associated Press. The disaster has already reshaped how Nevada will run its caucuses 11 days from now, and raise questions about whether caucuses, often criticized as quaint vestiges of another political time, can survive the modern era. Trust me, I was on that trail and I remember that as if it were yesterday. I mean, our whole campaign team was having a WTF moment in dealing with Iowa. Hated to see that happen, but it happened. Now with 2024 approaching, the question is, will the shift to South Carolina as a top priority work? That is a legitimate question. So those seeking to unseat the president would need to connect with South Carolinians, majority Black primary electorate, which is more conservative than either Iowa's prairie progressives or New Hampshire's northeastern Brahmins. In the state 2020 primary, more than 60% of Black voters chose Mr. Biden over his rivals, according to exit polls. And this report is coming from the New York Times. So again, we will see if it will work. And then next, Steve Phillips, a Democrat and author of several books on racial politics, said the changes would reward candidates who develop a deep bond with Black communities rather than train them to appeal to rural Iowans who might not support them in November. South Carolina has not always been good, though, for progressive candidates. In 2016, South Carolina overwhelmingly rejected Bernie Sanders after his early success. This reporting came from Politico. 4 of the 5 states now poised to start the party's primaries are presidential battlegrounds. Here's a reminder of that proposed new lineup: South Carolina, New Hampshire, Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan. The first 5 states would be positioned to cast ballots before Super Tuesday, the day when much of the rest of the country holds its primaries. That gives the early states outside influence, since White House hopefuls struggling to raise money or to gain political traction often drop out before visiting much of the rest of the country. Now, meanwhile, on the Republican side, the Republican National Committee has already decided to keep Iowa caucuses as the first contest in its 2024 presidential primary, ensuring that GOP White House hopefuls, which include Trump, have continued to frequently campaign there. Now, the change for next year in terms of the DNC, of the Democrats, will have to be voted on by the full DNC, and that will likely happen next year. The DNC also plans to revisit the primary calendar again before 2028, meaning that more changes could be coming before election. Now, Mayor, I'm feeling all types of ways about this, but I want you to jump in here. I don't necessarily agree with Steve Phillips that this will make politicians pay more attention and go deeper with Black voters. It will still be superficial. Also for me, and I was on the Sanders campaign, as most of our viewers know, I really have some feelings. I'm feeling some type of way about South Carolina and what happened. And although Senator Bernard Sanders did not perform well, I know that writer, the person that wrote that article, I mean, from my vantage point in 2016, I was a national surrogate for that campaign. He had never been a national candidate before. And so you had people running in the race, to be fair to the senator's campaign, who had been national candidates before. So it's harsh to say rejected as much as didn't really know. And in 2020, our campaign did do better, even though it was not enough to turn the tide. We did do better in 2020 than we did in 2016. But the major point here is whether or not this will work and whether or not Black voters will get the deep-seated relationship and love that they deserve from any candidate, especially Democrats.
So I have this horrible, overwhelming feeling about this. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But let's just be clear. This was selfish, right? Biden and the Democratic, this suggestion has nothing to do with anything other than Biden trying to figure out how he's going to win and snuff out anybody that might run against him. Let's just say that, first of all. However, much like the Republicans in their acts to talk about bash early voting, this may backfire on the Democratic establishment. Because what we know is that when you spend money on voters, those voters will vote more. So what we know is if you're building an apparatus that Iowa has had for the past 5 decades, all that money being spent every 4 years in Iowa created a better voting bloc, meaning the voters are not better, but they are better trained. They know how to vote, they vote often. So what's gonna happen is more Black people in South Carolina will vote often. That will not bode well for establishment candidates. Maybe not in this first election cycle, but coming up down the cycle, these younger voters, you'll have more younger voters participating. And that means we'll have more Black progressives being trained earlier in their life, which will make them better voters, which means we'll have less establishment candidates winning down the road. I'm happy about that. And if the party tried to say they did this to respect, this is why I pushed back on what Steve Phillips said. If they really cared about Black voters, Mississippi would a long time ago been the first place that we had early voter because it's the blackest electorate in the country. So that don't act like you did this to give Black people space. No, you did this trying to stack the tables for Biden. I ain't hearing it. I ain't buying it. You're lying. It's gonna backfire on you.
Woo, Mayor, good God Almighty. Let me just go on and fan myself, because Mayor, you dropped the damn mic on that one. It is selfish, it's cynical, and you're right, it may backfire on them. I am so glad you said what you said, because that's how I feel about this situation too. And they're trying to give the more conservative Democrat the advantage. This ain't about Black people and being more diverse. This is about a selfish move to help the Democrats and to use Black voters as a pawn once again. Hello, somebody. Mayor, I'm telling you, Marissa probably be mad, but I feel like taking off my mic right now and just running around the damn room. You dropped like 100 mics on that one. I'm feeling this.